Hey, Lee here. So I'm really thrilled to be able to tell you about a trip I recently took down the Baja Peninsula of Mexico. It just turned out to be an amazing motorcycle ride full of Mexican culture, adventure, and all sorts of unexpected excitement around every corner. So I arrived on the west coast flying into LA, and then I went over and met up with the folks at MotoQuest, where I got a Suzuki V-Strom 650, and it came fully outfitted and ready for adventure riding. From there, I just went south to Tijuana, crossing over into Mexico. My schedule was set completely by sunrise and sunset. I didn't have any reservations to keep. I just had my tent with me and all the gear that I needed, and I had an open mind for what I was going to encounter along my ride. So I was really surprised how easily I entered Mexico. Pretty much just driving right across the border. So there's some officials there, and they'll point you in the right direction to make sure that you get your tourist visa stamped, and they'll check the bike's insurance. But overall, really straightforward. So my Spanish is really rough, and they speak almost no English. But just simply knowing how to say please and thank you, and give a hopeful smile, and that was enough most of the time. So northern Baja shares a common passion with California wine country, and vineyards just dotted the countryside as I rode my way towards Rosarito. So the roads here are in great condition. There's a decent amount of traffic though, from all the trucks and the locals, but not really too hard to get through. I did have an encounter with the local police after I misunderstood a road sign and did something I wasn't supposed to. But after taking all my documents, they returned them once I paid a small fine on the spot, and I was on my way. So I continued south past the bustling beach town of Rosarito until I came across a small RV campground right on the beach. I negotiated with the night guard, and then I got to ride right out there onto the sand and found a nice private place to put up my tent for the first night there in Mexico. So I got all set up and got settled in as the sun went down, and I could see off the coast there storm clouds were gathering. It didn't take long, and later that night the rain just started pouring down, but luckily I was in the tent and I was nice and dry. So the rainstorm was passed over, and when I got up in the morning, it was a beautiful morning, still kind of overcast, but I was able to get the bike dried off, put down the tent, packed up my gear, and ready for a new fresh day. So on the bike, I carry about 4 liters of water with me and a decent stash of snack bars. And that first morning, those snack bars ended up being my breakfast. I was ready to get on the move. So I wasn't able to get as far that first day as I had hoped, so I planned a pretty ambitious ride to catch up on the second day. So on my map, I had about 500 kilometers marked out and ready to go, and then I started off towards one of Baja's largest cities, Ensenada. I'm not here for the cities though, so I stuck to the highways and continued right on through town and out the other side, going south. This route took me down the Pacific coast, so lots of opportunities to see the ocean and the beach off in the distance. And then it was going to turn inland towards Baja's mountain, with the Cerro Cortez, of course, on the far other side. Baja's landscape is just full of amazing variety, from these giant, intimidating mountains, flat farmlands, sand dunes, rocky volcanoes, and just amazing looking beaches. And then there's all these small towns, so lots of little places to look and see things, which really help break up the monotony and contribute a lot to the variety. Keep those long rides full of interesting things to see. One of the big concerns I had during all my planning was just getting gas, but that turned out not to be an issue. These Pemex stations were really frequent. You can find them in almost any decent sized town. So it was also great that they had food, and they're one of the few places that took credit cards. So everyone in Baja was happy to take pesos, but it was really kind of difficult at some points to find places that took credit cards, and some people would take dollars with a little bit of negotiating. My Suzuki V-Strom actually has a 22-liter fuel tank, which gives me a range of about 500 kilometers. I really tried to fill it up about every 250 just to be safe, which turned out to be pretty easy to do. Baja is the home of world-class off-road racing, and that allure brings people from all over. So on multiple occasions I ran into folks who had been out on the road for many weeks with months to go, trying to get to sort of long off places down south in South America. Really amazing to listen to the journey that they had ahead. For me, traveling in Baja was a chance to kind of refocus, to step back from the daily grind and face kind of fresh challenges on my own. Solo riding, certainly isn't for everyone. And no doubt, there were definitely times when I wondered if it was even a wise decision for me. But each time I overcame the unexpected, I gained a new story to tell and a clearer vision of my own kind of capabilities and my priorities. It really was just an awesome experience. Between towns, I passed through my first military checkpoint, I was prepared for a lot of rough questions. I thought they were going to look through all my paperwork, but it turned out to be really relaxed. It was clear that the soldiers didn't know really any English, so I just kind of named a town along my route, and they seemed happy. They'd walk around, look at the bike, point at some things, and then wave me on. Piece of cake. Not every checkpoint was that easy, but the majority of them were. A couple hours in along the ride, and I was ready for a break from the highway, so near the town of Colonette, I found a dusty dirt road that headed directly towards the Pacific, and I made a go of it. So of course, whenever you turn and leave civilization behind, there's always this concern about getting lost. So I was extra careful with a great GPS, fully loaded with maps, had my phone as a backup, also pre-downloading all the maps, and then I had the National Geographic set of adventure maps of North and South Baja, so I was covered. And one of the things that's great about these new GPS devices is you can actually get satellite communicators that allow you to send your location at some interval, and also send text messages to family and friends back home to stay in touch, as well as get help at a pinch. Today is my first full day in Mexico. Started out a little bit rainy in Ensenada, but as I've continued to go south, the skies have cleared and it's warmed up and it's gotten really nice out. I've headed off-road, headed towards the coast. Should be in the Pacific in just a little bit, and cruise down the beach and see what's going on there. In the middle of nowhere at this point, so it's fun just kind of cruising along and looking at the sights. It was really amazing to see all the little dirt roads and the single-track trails that crossed over this remote countryside. So even when I felt like I was pretty far from anything, all of these little cuts through the underbrush made it clear that others had come before and that almost any direction was open to exploring. So I ride a Suzuki V-Strom at home almost every day, and it was identical to the bike that I had here in Baja. But this was my first time really taking it into some more challenging off-road conditions. The bike was equipped with some pretty good trail tires, but they weren't intended for this serious kind of off-road riding, and that started to become pretty clear as I rode through places that had seen a lot of rain the previous week due to Hurricane Rosa. So all that soft desert dust had become this thick, gooey, slippery mud, and as soon as I would hit it, those tires, they would just cake full of mud and become like riding on ice. So you could see signs of some of the erosion from all of that heavy rain they had, and quickly I started learning about what it meant to drive on that mud and to get through sand, and it was challenging. It's challenging on this bike that was heavy with these tires that really just weren't equipped for it. So if there was one thing I'd do differently next time, probably the tires. But it was an awesome ride, and I got pretty fit learning how to pick this bike up again and again and again every time I encountered one of these difficult to ride on surfaces. The bike itself probably weighs about 500 pounds dry, so once you add all the gear, the fuel, oil, all the add-ons to make it adventure ready, the hard cases, it's a decent more than that. So continuing to lift that again and again is a great way to get in shape and fast. So as I started getting closer and closer to the coast, I started seeing all these white Teflon bags, these big piles, like in all directions up and down. So it turns out they were full of these little round stones collected by the locals. Probably the same stones that you see in the hardware stores at home. So up and down the beach, people were just walking along, feeling out each of these little volcanic rocks, finding ones that were the right size, the right smoothness, and then just collecting them. And given the sheer number of rocks that had already been collected, I'm guessing the trucks that come to retrieve them, must not come very often. So I wasn't about to come all this way and then just turn around and go back, or to miss out on the chance to really see this kind of interesting landscape up close. But it turns out these rocks are really tough to ride on. So they form this long ridge, almost like a rocky dune that went up and down the coast, running parallel to the beach. So I went straight along the top, aiming for some buildings that I could see off in the distance. Now, I don't know how deep these rocks go, but it's pretty deep, and they slide over each other really easily. It took me a while to make it down the coast, carefully trying to balance the bike, trying to make steady progress without having the rear tires dig themselves into these big holes. But I could tell this wasn't a common route for adventure bikes, just because everybody was stopping as I went by to take a look and watch me go on past on the bike. it was really neat to kind of experience this place that is not a common tourist spot. So finally I found a place that kind of came down on the inland side off of this rocky dune to solid ground, so I went for it. Of course though, there's more mud down there, lots of slippery mud. Falling again, getting the bike back up, continuing that same routine. So like many of these kind of places that you find on your travels, the more difficult it is to get there, the more rewarding the experience is once you arrive. So sitting on the bike at the edge of the overlook, with miles of rocky shoreline leading towards these towering cliffs off in the distance, it was just an amazing experience. This whole community of folks going up and down the coast, trying out each rock as they collect them, and then listening to the water, the ocean waves splashing up against, and then kind of gurgling back across the stones back into the sea. It was really just an awesome spot. So from here, I continued down the coastline, with the cliffs on my right dropping into the sea, and then the small hills on my left, all covered in short brush. The dirt road was hard packed, and it made for like really easy riding. So it's kind of these trails that the Suzuki V-Strom with the tires that I had, felt really at home. We just cruised right along, really comfortably, great traction, just a pleasure. So as far as I can tell, you can probably ride roads like these all the way down to the southern tip of Baja. Going through all the small towns and fishing villages along the way. Many times I came across these small collections of homes, and I could see these hints of roads that would kind of veer off inland, making these little local shortcuts to the main highway, which was just a little bit farther beyond the horizon. So after enjoying the scenery for a while, I eventually headed inland myself and picked up one of these roads going over to the highway, which continued south towards San Quentin. And along this route, passing by all these like giant greenhouses, full of tomatoes and all sorts of produce that grow in this area. So I knew it wasn't going to be long before the route kind of hit the point where it turns inland towards the mountains, and just kind of leaves all the scenic views of the Pacific behind. So I was keeping this like close eye on the ocean, watching for a break in the cliffs that might offer just one last chance to get down there and put my feet in the Pacific. So right as the highway turned, it passed this dry riverbed, which in rainier times, like probably the week before during the hurricane, it would have been just rushing whitewater. But it was actually a dry wash by the time that I was there. So pulling off the road, I started picking my way through the rocks, avoiding the wet spots, of course, while making the most of this one last opportunity to get down to the ocean.
It was a little bit of a distance, a lot of rocks, and not very easy to get over, but I made it, and I came across this beach that is just phenomenal. So it just goes on and on as far as you can see, and there's nobody here, there's no houses, there's no buildings of any sort, just absolutely gorgeous. Covered in these tiny little rocks, there's this really neat arch that's been formed by the waves. It's really phenomenal. So it was a really great find. Now the question is, can I get back?
Right where the waves touched the land, the piles of rocks and erosion debris gave way to the soft sand, and there's plenty of piles of kelp scattered all around. I'm guessing they must have washed in during the previous week's hurricane. So Baja in early October has the perfect weather. So lows were in the 60s, highs the week I was there was in the 80s, like the current day. And humidity was low, but not enough to feel like you're baking when it's sunny out. There was hardly a cloud in the sky, and a steady wind was blowing. It was just an amazingly comfortable day. So out past the breaking waves, there were a few large rocks sticking up from the water, and occasionally some small groups of pelicans would fly overhead. Taking off my kind of heavy, rugged adventure boots after several days on the road, it felt almost strange touching that soft sand with my bare feet. If there was a perfect day, today was it, and I was definitely going to take full advantage. I mean, hey, you only live once, right? The way back out towards the highway was definitely more challenging, mainly because I didn't have gravity to help me through all those tough spots where traction was limited. It was mostly uneventful, and after a couple slides through the mud, hopping the bike out of some low spots, I was able to get back to the highway and ready to start making progress towards the Sea of Cortez. One of the great things about Mexican highways is that everyone is accustomed to lots of vehicles going different speeds. So heading inland towards the Baja, across the Baja Peninsula, I headed into the mountains for the first time. And of course, lots of big curves, crossing these mountain peaks with twisty roads right alongside these big rig trucks. And usually there were some guardrails to help me feel a little bit safe when there was a large drop-off, but often there were signs of damage on these guardrails from previous accidents, and then sometimes there was just no guardrails at all. It was a little bit sketchy. So coming up on these slower vehicles from behind, they have this great culture around making it easier for passing. So once the truck in front felt like it was safe and clear for me to get around, they'd put on their left turn signal to say to pass on that side. And I could just make one last check and zoom right around. So even these small pleasantries, these kind of little moments of helpfulness from others, really made an impact on me. And I really enjoyed every encounter I had with the local Mexican population. Everyone is always eager to be friendly and super helpful if they could, treated me very fairly and kind. My first couple of days in Baja really had an impact. The adventure, riding solo, it was just an awesome experience. This day didn't end the way that I expected. I ended up having a wrong turn that left me stuck in the mud. But thankfully, the kindness of a stranger helped me close out the day in a sleeping bag and an old pickup truck camper. So listen to the next episode to find out more and keep following along on this exciting trip. Want to see my latest adventure? Make sure to follow me on Twitter.